Hi everyone, Aiden here at the Etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and later we'll be showing you how to install this Erickson truck bed ladder rack on our 2023 Chevrolet Silverado 1500. Now this is going to be a pretty basic ladder rack, but it's still very capable. It's going to give you a fixed height above the cab of your truck and allow you to carry up to 800 pounds. So good for the job site applications, adding some lumber, ladders, and any other extended loads above the bed. And it's constructed of aluminum, which keeps things lightweight and rust resistant. And when it comes to ladder racks, you've got a lot of different options that would work great on your Silverado. Just know that if you're looking at this one, it's going to be pretty bare bones. And what I mean by that is it's just not going to have as many convenience features like height adjustment or just not look as good as some of the more premium options that we carry like the Yakima Overhaul. If that's something that you're looking for, you can find those options here at Etrailer, and they are really nice, but they're also a lot more expensive. This one is going to be a much more entry-level price point and still give you good capability for that price point. So if you're just looking to carry some things and you need the heavier weight capacity, this can get the job done. Now it does use a pretty basic clamping system to attach to your bed rails, but all things considered, it actually works really well in the Silverado. You've got tons of space underneath the bed rails, so those clamps aren't running into any interferences, and even if you had something like a plastic drop-in liner, I think it'd be just fine. And because the bed rails here are a pretty sharp, angular cutoff and not super rounded, that rectangular shape from the base fits really well around it and gives you a nice, strong hold on the bed. And even though it's a more entry-level ladder rack, it does come included with load stops. You can adjust them with the hand knob at the bottom. So adjusting to those loads to offer some side support is going to be pretty straightforward. Now the triangle shape is pretty weird. It doesn't offer a ton of support on the top because it's a pretty narrow top, but it's more designed to help load and unload. So if you're pushing a ladder up from the back, you can kind of ramp it up and it's not going to scratch on the edges as much. And again, it's aluminum, so even if it does scratch, you're not going to have to worry about rust. And this whole system is going to be very fixed. You can, in theory, loosen up the clamps and move the crossbars closer or further apart to adjust for maybe some different accessories if you wanted to load up something like a bike rack on the weekends. But it's going to be a lot of work to do that, and more likely, you're probably going to install this and just leave it on full time. The height from the bed rails to the top of the crossbar is going to be 29 inches, and that's going to leave you plenty of room from the roof of your Silverado. So even though you don't have an extra support over the cab of the truck, if you've got something that's extending over there and you experience some bounce, I don't think you're going to make any roof contact because of that extra clearance. Now the only other thing to worry about is the install. And it is a pretty straightforward process because everything's a little bit more basic and there's not very much adjustment. That also means there's fewer parts, less hardware, and it's really just a matter of clamping it down. So let's check out that process now. Now the thing I like to do when starting off my installation is laying out all of my parts because it's going to make things a lot easier and more organized for you, but it can help you know if you were missing something. But we already did the front upright and crossbar assembly, and it's a pretty straightforward process. You do have a very large bag of nuts and bolts that comes in the kit, and when you dump it out, it can be a little overwhelming. But break it down into three main sections. You've got the clamps, which will hold the uprights down to the bed rail. You're going to have all the hardware associated with your load stops right next to that. That's what we'll be focusing on first. And then eventually we'll get to the hardware that supports or connects our crossbar to the uprights. To secure our load stops, we'll find this bracket on our crossbar, line up the holes and pass through your M8 bolts, 2 in total, and on the other side secure it with an M8 nylock nut. Do that for both and tighten them down. Now, even though the load stops are attached, they're still loose. And to get those fully secured, we're just going to add a flat washer, lock washer, and hand knob to the underside And I'm just gonna have this moved over relatively to the middle of the crossbar. The exact spacing of this will obviously depend on the load you have up there, and it'll change, but for now I just want it out of my way. Now we can move on to attaching our uprights to the bed rail. This part's gonna be pretty straightforward. You just wanna make sure that you get the spacing appropriate for whatever load you're carrying. So if you want these more spread out, have them more spread out. If you want them a bit closer together for a different type of accessory maybe, then have it closer together. But just make sure you look underneath the bed rail and ensure that nothing is going to make contact with those clamp pads, because there are some small plastic clips that hold the cap of the bed rail in. So I'm just gonna feed that up through like this, drop down my largest flat washer from the kit, the largest lock washer, and the largest nuts that are also the only non-nylock nuts. It's just the regular ones. So thread it down, make sure it's not cross-threaded or anything like that, and just get it hand tight for now. And repeat that for the other clamp location and the other side. And once you have the uprights on both sides attached and you've verified, maybe with something stationary like this stake pocket, that the distance from that is the same on both sides, you can go back through with a 19mm or 3/4 inch socket and tighten down the hardware. And finally, we can take this crossbar that's been loosely assembled and drop it onto the uprights. Just making sure we line up the 2 carriage bolts that are in the underside of the bar there with the 2 holes on top of our uprights. And one minor thing we experienced when installing the rear upright assembly that we didn't see at the front is that 2 of these carriage bolts were having trouble lining up with the holes on the upright. And the reasoning for that is because your bed rail is going to taper out slightly as it gets closer to the tailgate end of the truck. So these uprights might not sit perfectly flat and flush against the sides like they did at the cab end of the truck. So all we did is just loosened up these clamps and just brought this upright out a little bit. There's a small gap on my side that doesn't really exist on this side here. It's really not much, not even 1/4 inch. So you might have to make that adjustment, and that will help these carriage bolts pass down through nice and straight. All we gotta do now is attach our hardware. And that hardware combination is gonna be a flat washer, lock washer, and a nylock nut. And everything will get tightened up with a 17mm socket. And once you're done, you can go back through and just give everything a quick shake. Make sure that none of the parts are loose. Everything should be solid as just one unit. And once you've done that, you're good to go. You're ready to start using it. And that'll complete our look at an installation of this Erickson Ladder Rack on our 2023 Chevrolet Silverado 1500. Thanks for watching.